Chen Mills Neim. I'm director of the Center for Sustainable Change. We're based in Palo Alto, California, and we're about 4 years old as a nonprofit. We really grew out of the three principles work that Roger Millsa, my father, started about 30 years ago in Dade County, Florida, in communities that were suffering from violence and drug activity, low school attendance rates, so on and so forth. And I found myself in the middle of the same kinds of communities that he started working in, almost 30 years ago. Now our main project is the National Community Resiliency Project, and that's currently in 3 sites in Des Moines, Iowa, where we work with the Three Principles Network and United Way, and just outside of downtown Charlotte, North Carolina, in a small neighborhood called Lakewood. That's predominantly African American, with a crime rate when we started that was 4 times the average of Greater Charlotte. And our 3rd site now is the Mississippi Delta region, and that's the region along the Mississippi River that includes Mississippi, Arkansas, and Louisiana. So we're in 3 states around the Delta, and that's brand new, and it's going really well, and we're very excited because there are 55 counties in that area. So it's we've bitten off quite a lot to chew on, but we're excited about it. It's going well so far. And the results that Roger saw at Modello, that were documented in the book Modello, A Story of Hope for the Inner City and Beyond, are what we're starting to see in Lakewood, where the crime rate was so high, and now it's down by 62% since the project started, and violent crimes there are down by 80%. So I was really surprised to see those outcomes. We weren't necessarily looking for crime-based outcomes, but that's what's happening there, and that's what tends to happen with principles-based work, is that changes start happening that you couldn't have predicted. And I think I tend to sort of be more of I like to say realist, but others might say pessimist about outcomes, and not say, oh, it's going to be like this, or it's going to be like with Modello, that successful. So it's been a nice surprise to see the crime rates go down. So Roger may have predicted it, but I didn't. Well, when Roger started with Modello, there was a more intensive effort to be in a community, to actually hire people from the community, to work on the project every day. And so now that we're national, I can see that we can't do that kind of intensity. We're based in California. But what I trust is that if we teach the principles to people on the ground who are really interested and really motivated to learn, like agencies, for example. In Lakewood, our project partner is the Lakewood Community Development Corporation. And they had read Modello, the executive director had read Modello and got all excited and contacted Roger. And so we wrote a grant together to get that project going. And so when we know that we have agency people on the ground who are learning the principles, and they're in the community, we really trust that learning the principles will elevate the way that they operate with people in their community. And as people in the community learn the principles, then they elevate, and when I say elevate, I mean they elevate their level of consciousness or their state of mind. So they're living in more peaceful, more insightful states of mind, and from insightful states of mind come solutions to that community's problems. So even if I know a community has a problem, I can't tell them what to do about it, and it may, what I think about a community's problem, like, oh gosh, let me, for example, say there's garbage all over the streets. I may see that and say, well, that's a big problem for this community. How can kids grow up with garbage all over the streets? Now, the residents of that community, that may not be what's on their minds. What may be on their minds, it could be, that they're paying their electricity bills are too high, and they need to get that resolved before anything else. So as residents live in more, in higher levels of consciousness and more insightful states of mind, they see what's important to them, and they start to see solutions in ways that they can become proactive rather than just complaining about problems, which doesn't just happen in low-income housing developments, it happens for all of us. So we really go in and just teach the principles the same way that if I worked with, was working with a client from Palo Alto, which is a relatively affluent area, I would teach the same way, actually. Everyone wants to know what are the steps, and do you have a handbook for working in communities? And the only answer I have for that is you don't know what your project's going to look like until you see who shows up for it. And then what does their wisdom reveal to them about what needs to be done? So in a way, it's the most organic way of working with people, because all we're doing is talking about their thoughts, their capacity for a higher level of consciousness, for wisdom, and then they need to really come up with their own strategy. So when we were just in Mississippi last week, it was interesting to me to hear the outcomes that folks in Mississippi in the Delta area and also in Arkansas, what they wanted for their communities and what kinds of outcomes excited them. And then in one community in Clarksdale, the discussion was around maybe reviving a walking program for all the residents to get out and walk every Friday night or just start walking. And that's a lovely idea. Now what works for Clarksdale might not work for Rolling Fork, which is another community. I mean, maybe no one's interested in walking, or there's no infrastructure to start that. So in Rolling Fork, what came up was, we used to have a crime prevention, like a neighborhood watch program that was great. And we used to have a racial discussion group where different races would get together and talk about stuff over like potluck. And so the woman who's working with us, Helen Jean Bush in Rolling Fork, came up with the idea of maybe we could start those groups up again. Now, that's an outcome of people feeling hopeful because they've learned the principles. They feel hopeful, and then they feel like they have creativity and energy to do things and to work together. So really for me, the principles are like the lubricant for all the other community changes that can take place in any community, or even in urban settings. Because when people work from more compassionate and understanding states of mind, boy, the difference in what you can do is like, here's you can do this much in frames of mind or states of mind where you're antagonistic and judgmental with each other and insecure and suspicious, let's say, and you can do this much when you're in states of mind that are tolerant and accepting. It doesn't mean you're a doormat. You take care of business too, but you don't get caught up in the judgment and the stress and all the conflicts that come sometimes from trying to work together. So that's the difference in my mind of how much can be done. And I have no idea what it would be. It would be different for each community.